At 1:17 in the morning, you are lying in bed with the room dark and your face lit by an old conversation. The messages ended months ago, perhaps years ago. You already know every sentence, every pause, every place where warmth became distance. Still, your thumb moves upward, returning to the beginning as though the past might reveal a hidden door if you read it one more time. Beside you, the pillow is cool. The house is quiet. Somewhere outside, a car passes through the wet street and disappears. You tell yourself you are trying to understand what happened. But there is a more uncomfortable question. Are you searching for understanding, or are you searching for a reason to keep the person alive inside your pain? You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. In the time we share, you may begin to recognize why letting someone go can feel like a betrayal of love. You may understand how attachment turns memory into a place of residence, how resentment keeps a relationship active long after contact has ended, and how the need for one final explanation becomes an attempt to control what can no longer be changed. You will also learn how to release someone without pretending they did no harm, without making yourself cold, and without using hatred as the strength that carries you away. Because hatred can help you leave a room, but it cannot help you stop living in that room. Before we go further, try a small experiment. Place your phone where you can see it, but do not touch it. For the next 30 seconds, imagine that the person you are trying to release has sent you a message. You do not know what it says. Perhaps it is an apology. Perhaps it is only your name. Perhaps it says, "Can we talk?" Notice what happens in the body before any real message has arrived. The chest may tighten. The stomach may lift. Your hand may want to move toward the phone. The mind may begin writing the message for them. Then it may begin writing your reply. In less than a few seconds, an entire conversation can take place without the other person being present. Now look at the phone again. Nothing has happened, yet something in you has already been pulled into motion. This is important. The bond you are trying to release does not live only in photographs, text threads, shared property, or physical distance. It lives in a chain of reactions inside the body and mind. A cue appears. A sensation follows. The sensation becomes a thought. The thought becomes a story. The story creates a reaction. The reaction, repeated, becomes a habit. And the habit eventually becomes an identity. You begin with, "I miss them." Then, "I cannot stop thinking about them." Then, "I am the person who was left." Or, "I am the person they betrayed." Or, "I am the person who still loves someone I should have forgotten." A relationship may end in one conversation, but an identity can continue renewing the relationship for years. Imagine that you once had a key to a house where you were deeply loved. You knew the rooms. You knew which stair creaked at night. You knew how the afternoon light fell across the kitchen floor. You knew where the spare blankets were kept, and how the front door needed a small lift before the lock would turn. Then one day, the house was no longer yours to enter. Perhaps you left. Perhaps they did. Perhaps there was betrayal, death, distance, addiction, silence, or a slow accumulation of moments in which love stopped feeling safe. But the key remained in your pocket. At first, keeping it seemed natural. It had been part of your life. It carried memories of warmth. It also carried the shock of losing access. Months passed. You moved through other rooms, other seasons, other conversations. Still, your hand often reached into the pocket to feel the shape of the key. You did not use it. You only checked that it was still there. This is how many people carry someone they have lost. Not as a living relationship, but as an old key. The key opens nothing in the present, yet throwing it away feels cruel, as though you would be denying that the house ever sheltered you. So you keep it, and because you keep it, some part of you remains a visitor waiting outside a door that no longer belongs to you. A woman named Rachel kept her key in the form of an unread message. Her son was 32. They had not spoken in nearly a year. Their last conversation began in the kitchen after a family meal. Rachel had asked why he rarely called. He said every call became an interrogation. She said she was only trying to care. He said her care felt like control. Then he mentioned childhood moments she remembered differently. Her voice sharpened. His did too. A chair moved against the floor. Someone in the next room turned down the television. The conversation ended with her son saying, "I need space." For weeks, Rachel sent messages. "I hope you're okay. I'm sorry you feel hurt. I don't understand why you're doing this. Your father misses you. We are still your family." Some messages were read. Some were not. Then she stopped sending them, but she did not stop composing them. She composed them while folding laundry. She composed them at red lights. She composed them in the grocery store when she saw the cereal he ate as a child. At night, she opened their conversation and stared at the final message she had not answered. "I love you, but I cannot keep having the same conversation." Rachel told herself she wanted reconciliation. But look more closely. She was attached not only to her son. She was attached to a particular version of the relationship. In that version, she was a loving mother whose intentions should have been enough. He was the child who would eventually understand. The past would be reviewed, and her innocence would be confirmed. Attachment is often misunderstood as caring deeply. But caring and attachment are different movements. Care says, "You matter, even when I cannot possess the outcome." Attachment says, "This must become what I need it to become, or I cannot be at peace." Attachment does not always cling to a person's presence. Sometimes it clings to their apology, their return, their agreement, or their willingness to remember the past the way we remember it. Rachel was not only holding her son. She was holding a courtroom. In her mind, evidence was presented. Old sacrifices were displayed. The sleepless nights of motherhood. The school lunches. The hospital visits. The money she did not spend on herself. Surely all of this should prove that she had loved him. And perhaps she had. But love does not erase impact. A person can mean well and still wound someone. A person can sacrifice greatly and still demand too much in return. A person can be loving in many moments and unable to listen in another. This is difficult because the mind prefers clean roles. Victim and offender. Good parent and ungrateful child. Faithful partner and cruel betrayer. The person who tried and the person who ruined everything. Clean roles create clean anger. Human beings are rarely that clean. In Buddhist teaching, attachment is not a command to stop loving. It is an invitation to notice where love has become a demand against reality. You can test this in your own life. Bring the person to mind and complete this sentence honestly. I could finally be at peace if they would only apologize, return, admit what they did, understand me, choose me, regret leaving, become the person I believed they were. Now notice what your peace has been made dependent upon. Another human being's awareness, another human being's courage, another human being's timing, another human being's version of the truth. This does not mean you should accept injustice or abandon hope for a healthy conversation. It means your inner freedom cannot remain permanently locked in someone else's hands. Rachel's first step was not calling her son again. It was sitting with the possibility that he might not return soon. The body resisted this. Her chest felt hollow. Her hands became restless. The mind produced images of future holidays, an empty chair at the family table, grandchildren she might never know. Then the thought came, if I accept this, I am giving up on him. But acceptance is not approval. It is contact with what is already true. At this moment, he is not speaking to me. I do not like it. I do not know how long it will last. I can examine my part without forcing him to resume contact. I can love him without entering the space he has asked me to leave. For several weeks, Rachel wrote messages in a notebook instead of sending them. At first, the pages were arguments. Then they became questions. Then slowly they became memories. One morning she wrote, I may have listened for disrespect when he was trying to describe pain. She did not become a villain. She became more honest. That honesty was painful, but it was not hatred. It was the first sound of the old key being placed on a table. There is a common fear beneath attachment. If I let go, what we had will become meaningless. But meaning is not preserved by continued suffering. You do not honor a beautiful season by refusing to notice that the season has changed. You do not prove that a house was once home by sleeping forever on its front steps. Letting go does not say the love was false. It says the form has ended. A man named Thomas had been divorced for 3 years, yet every evening he still visited the marriage. He visited through photographs, through financial records, through imagined conversations, through the social media page of the man his former wife had later married. Thomas was 61. He had a steady job, grown children, a quiet apartment, and a kitchen table he rarely used. He ate dinner in front of the television, then opened his phone. Sometimes he told himself he only wanted to see whether she looked happy. Sometimes he wanted proof that she did not. He studied the background of photographs. A new dining room, a vacation near the coast, a birthday dinner with people he once knew. Each image gave him a small wound. Then he returned the next night. Thomas believed he could not let go because he still loved her. But love was not the only thing holding him. Resentment was doing much of the work. Resentment is often treated as the opposite of attachment. It is not. Resentment is attachment with its face turned toward injury. You may no longer want the person back. You may even feel disgust when you imagine returning. Yet you remain tied to them through the need to prove that they were wrong, that you were wronged, that the account has not been settled. Hatred can feel like separation because it creates emotional distance. But look carefully. The person you hate still occupies your attention. Their choices still shape your nervous system. Their memory still decides whether your evening is peaceful. The bond has changed its temperature, but it has not been released. Thomas often repeated one sentence. She got away with it. The sentence referred to the affair, the lies, the money spent in secret, and the way mutual friends had gradually stopped inviting him to gatherings. His suffering was real. Forgiveness did not require pretending otherwise, but resentment had made a hidden promise. If I remain angry, justice remains alive. If I stop replaying what happened, it will be as though nothing happened. If I become peaceful, she wins. This is one of resentment's most convincing illusions, that your continued pain is evidence in a trial the universe is still conducting. But the trial is often happening in an empty courtroom. The other person may not know you are awake at 2 a.m. They may not feel the tension in your jaw. They may not hear the speech you repeat in the shower. Resentment tells you that you are holding them accountable. But much of the time, you are holding the wound open. This does not mean consequences are unnecessary. If someone committed a crime, legal action may be appropriate. If someone is abusive, distance may be essential. If property, custody, employment, or safety is involved, practical protection matters. Spiritual practice does not replace therapy, medical care, legal protection, healthy boundaries, or practical action. Forgiveness without boundaries can become another form of self-abandonment. But boundaries protect the present. Resentment keeps litigating the past. One old Zen story tells of 2 travelers who came to a river after heavy rain. Near the bank stood a woman who was afraid to cross. One traveler lifted her and carried her through the water. On the other side, he set her down, and the 2 travelers continued walking. Hours later, the second traveler said, "You should not have carried her." The first replied, "I put her down at the river." Are you still carrying her? The story is often used too easily, as though painful history could be dropped through a clever sentence. Some wounds cannot simply be put down at the river. The body may carry them for years. Trust may remain altered. A person may need time, treatment, community, and safety before the nervous system stops expecting danger. But the story points toward a question. What are you carrying now that no longer protects anyone? Thomas was not carrying his former wife. He was carrying the moment he discovered the betrayal. Every time he viewed her new life, he returned to that moment and asked the body to experience it again. Trigger. A photograph. Sensation. Heat in the chest. Thought. She replaced me. Story. I was never enough. She is happy because my suffering did not matter. People chose her because I am disposable. Reaction. He searched for more photographs, poured another drink, and sent a bitter message to a friend. Habit. Evening after evening, the same journey. Identity. I am the man whose life was stolen. Notice how the event became a self. What happened to you matters. But what happened to you is not the whole of you. The wound may explain certain reactions. It does not have to become your permanent name. In Buddhist teaching, Karma is often misunderstood as punishment or fate. Some imagine a cosmic record that distributes suffering according to secret calculations. A simpler understanding is closer to what you can observe directly. Karma is the direction created by intention and repetition. Each thought leaves a tendency. Each word prepares another word. Each action makes a similar action easier to repeat. Thomas did not choose the betrayal. He did not choose the shock that entered his body when he discovered it, but every night he returned to the photographs, the path of resentment became easier to travel. The next night, his hand reached for the phone sooner. The story formed faster. The anger felt more justified. The identity grew more solid. This is not blame. Responsibility is not the claim that you caused every condition that shaped you. Responsibility means you can participate in what is shaped next. You may not have planted the first seed, but awareness allows you to notice what you are watering now. One evening, Thomas opened his former wife's profile and saw a photograph from a family gathering. His daughter was in the picture. She was laughing. Thomas immediately began enlarging the image, studying who stood beside whom. Then he noticed something he had ignored. His daughter had sent him a message earlier that afternoon. "Do you want to have dinner this week?" He had seen the notification and planned to answer later. Now 4 hours had passed. He was studying the image of his daughter while ignoring the living daughter who had reached toward him. This was the turning point. Not a miracle. Not a sudden disappearance of anger. Only a quiet recognition. He was using the past to abandon the present. He closed the photograph and answered the message. "Thursday works." "I like that." A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. Thomas's step was small. He did not forgive everything that night. He did not delete every photograph. He did not bless his former wife and wish her perfect happiness. He simply stopped feeding the old injury for one evening and responded to the life that was still responding to him. This is how release often begins. Not through a grand emotional decision, through a different action at the familiar doorway. The next time resentment appears, pause for 60 seconds before following it. Do not suppress it. Feel where it lands. Perhaps the throat tightens. Perhaps the face becomes warm. Perhaps the hands prepare to type. Name what is happening without turning it into an identity. Anger is here. Memory is here. The urge to punish is here. Then ask, what is this reaction trying to protect? Often the answer is dignity, safety, the need to be believed, the fear that peace will erase the truth. Tell yourself something precise. What happened mattered. I do not need to injure myself again to prove it mattered. Take 3 breaths before sending the message, opening the profile, or repeating the story. The first breath notices the wound. The second breath notices the urge. The third breath creates a small space in which another action becomes possible. You may still speak. You may still document what happened. You may still say no. You may still leave. But you are no longer allowing the oldest pain in the room to choose every word. Forgiveness may eventually come, or it may not come in the form you expected. Perhaps forgiveness is not warmth. Perhaps it is the moment you stop hoping they suffer enough to understand you. Perhaps it is releasing the private job of supervising their consequences. Perhaps it is refusing to let their worst action become the final author of your character. You can forgive without returning. You can stop hating someone and still keep the door closed. You can wish them no harm while refusing to offer access. This is not contradiction. It is maturity. Compassion does not require proximity. Sometimes the most compassionate distance is the distance that stops 2 people from repeating the same harm. The third obstacle often appears when attachment has failed and resentment has become exhausting. The mind begins bargaining for one final conversation, one final explanation, one final message written perfectly enough that the other person will finally understand. This is the illusion of control. A woman named Nina spent 6 months revising an email to a former friend. They had known each other for 20 years. They had raised children at the same time, taken vacations together, sat in hospital waiting rooms, exchanged birthday gifts, and spoken through many ordinary afternoons when nothing important happened. Then a conflict began over money connected to a shared business project. The disagreement widened. Old complaints entered. Private information was repeated to other people. The friendship ended through a series of emails that became colder with every reply. Nina wrote a final message explaining everything. She described the betrayal. She admitted her own mistakes. She clarified dates, intentions, and conversations. The email became 8 pages long. She shortened it to 5, then expanded it to 7. She asked her sister to read it, then a therapist, then a co-worker who knew neither person. Everyone said some version of the same thing. You have explained yourself. But Nina was not trying only to explain herself. She was trying to control how she would be remembered. She wanted her former friend to say, "Now I see. You are not who I thought you were. I understand your pain. I accept my part." Without that response, Nina feared the false version of her would remain alive in someone else's mind. This fear is deeply human. We want to correct the record. We want the people who witnessed our worst moment to also witness our growth. We want those who misunderstood us to revise their judgment. But there is a painful freedom in recognizing that you cannot manage another person's inner world. You cannot enter their memory and rearrange the furniture. You cannot force their nervous system to feel safe with you. You cannot make them interpret your silence as respect rather than indifference. You cannot control which version of you they carry, and they cannot control which version of them you carry. This does not mean communication is useless. A sincere apology matters. A clear explanation can repair confusion. A boundary spoken calmly can prevent future harm. But communication has completed its task when truth has been offered. Control begins when you demand a particular result from the offering. Nina's trigger was the unfinished email. Whenever she saw the draft, she felt pressure in the chest. The thought came, "I have not found the right words yet." The story followed. If I explain perfectly, she will understand. If she understands, the friendship may be restored. If it is not restored, at least she will know I am not a bad person. The reaction was another revision. The revision became a nightly habit. The habit became part of her identity. I am the person waiting to be correctly understood. The illusion of control often disguises itself as responsibility. It says, "I must fix this." But not everything unfinished is yours to finish. Some conversations end because the other person has stopped listening. Some relationships end because truth would require changes one or both people are unwilling to make. Some doors remain closed not because you failed to find the right key, but because the house has changed owners. Remember the key in your pocket. At first, you kept it because the house mattered. Then you kept it because you hoped the door might reopen. Later, perhaps, you kept it because you wanted proof that you once belonged there. But the key has begun to shape the way you walk. Your hand checks the pocket. Your attention returns to the old address. You compare every new room to the one you lost. You may even reject warmth because it does not resemble the warmth you remember. This is when memory stops honoring the past and begins occupying the future. Nina eventually sent a much shorter message. "I am sorry for the ways I contributed to the harm between us. I understand that you may not want further contact. I will respect that. I am grateful for what was good, and I hope we both find peace." She received no reply. For 3 days, she checked her phone constantly. Then one morning, she made coffee and sat near the window before opening any messages. The room was pale with early light. A bird moved along the fence. Her chest still ached. But for the first time, she understood that silence was also an answer. Not an answer to every question. Not proof of who was right. Only information about what was available now. She deleted the longer draft. She did not delete the history. There is a difference. Letting go does not require you to erase photographs, deny memories, or declare the relationship meaningless. It means you stop asking memory to become a present tense home. In meditation, this can be practiced directly. Sit in a chair, on the edge of your bed, or on a cushion. Let the spine be upright, but not stiff. Rest the hands on the thighs or gently together. Close the eyes if that feels safe, or lower the gaze. Bring attention to the breath. Do not force it to become deep. Feel the body breathing as it already knows how. Notice the beginning of the inhale. Notice the small turning point. Notice the exhale. Soon, the person may appear in the mind. A face, a sentence, a scene. Do not chase it away. Do not invite it closer. Name it softly, remembering, longing, anger, imagining, then return to the feeling of one breath. The mind will go back, return again. This return is not rejection of the person. It is a refusal to disappear into the image. Sit for 10 minutes at first. Over time, sit for 15 or 20. Practice at a regular hour if possible, perhaps before opening the phone in the morning or before sleep. You are not training yourself to stop caring. You are training yourself to recognize the difference between love and mental captivity. During the day, create a pause before opening old messages, searching their name, or checking whether they viewed something you posted. Feel the hand moving toward the phone. Wait 60 seconds. Ask, what am I hoping to receive? Connection? Proof? Punishment? Relief? A reason to begin the story again? If there is a practical reason to look with awareness. If there is only the wish to reopen the wound, let the phone remain still. At first, this pause may feel empty. Then it may begin to feel like freedom. You will know something is changing when your reactions become slower. A memory appears, but you do not immediately build a courtroom around it. Their name comes up in conversation, and you do not need to prove that your version is the final version. You can hear someone describe their pain without preparing a defense for every detail. You can rest without believing that vigilance is the price of safety. You can notice a thought about them and allow it to pass without turning it into a command. You can forgive without returning to the place where the harm continues. You can end the day without reopening the entire relationship in your mind. And one day, perhaps, you can remember something beautiful without using the beauty as evidence that the ending should not have happened. That is a subtle form of healing. You stop forcing every good memory to argue against reality. Some relationships contain real love and still cannot continue. Some people care for each other and still bring out patterns that neither knows how to stop. Some endings are not proof that nothing mattered. They are proof that meaning and permanence are not the same. An aging father may sit at the far end of the family table, speaking less than he once did. An empty chair may remind everyone of a person who chose distance or a person who died. A child may wait for attention, while adults quietly carry arguments that began before the child was born. Presence does not solve the entire family history, but presence keeps history from consuming the only meal that is actually being shared. You may not be able to repair every bond. You can still choose not to abandon the people who are here while grieving the person who is not. Thomas learned this slowly. During dinner with his daughter, he almost asked several questions about her mother. He felt them forming. How often do you see her? Is she happy? Does she ever talk about me? Then he noticed his daughter's face. She was telling him about a difficult decision at work. For years, she had felt that every conversation became a bridge back to the divorce. Thomas took a breath and stayed with her story. He listened without preparing the next question. His daughter did not praise him for this. She may not even have noticed. But a different father was present at the table. Rachel also changed in quiet ways. When her son's birthday came, she sent one message. I love you. No response is required. I hope today is gentle. Then she placed the phone in another room. She cried. She took a walk. She called her sister, not to build a case against her son, but to say, this is hard, and I don't want to be alone tonight. She was learning that grief shared honestly is different from resentment rehearsed repeatedly. Months later, her son replied, Thank you. Nothing more. Rachel felt the old urge to pour an entire year of longing into the opening. Instead, she took 3 breaths. She answered, You're welcome. This was not the reunion she had imagined. It was a small contact with reality. She did not force it to become a promise. Nina never received a reply from her former friend. Some days, she still wished for one. But the wish no longer organized the day. She began calling another friend she had neglected during the conflict. She volunteered at a local library on Saturday mornings. She learned the names of 2 people who worked there. Her life did not replace one person with another. Human beings are not interchangeable. But attention that had been imprisoned in one closed relationship began returning to the larger world. This is one meaning of letting go. Energy comes home. You may still love the person. You may still miss them when a particular song plays, or when the weather resembles an afternoon you shared. You may still feel anger about what happened. Letting go does not require emotional perfection. It requires a different relationship with the emotion. Instead of saying, "This feeling means I must contact them," you say, "Longing is here." Instead of saying, "This anger proves I should keep the case alive," you say, "The wound is asking to be witnessed." Instead of saying, "I cannot move on until they understand," you say, "I can tell the truth even when understanding is not returned." This is mindfulness in ordinary language, knowing what is present without becoming its servant. For reflection, write 2 letters. The first letter is not to be sent. Write everything the mind still wants to say. Do not make it spiritual. Do not make it polite. Write the accusation, the longing, the apology, the disappointment, the hope, and the sentence you wish they had spoken. Then put the letter away for one day. The next day, write a second letter addressed to yourself. Begin with these words. What I needed then was. Perhaps you needed honesty, protection, reassurance, a boundary, a witness, a chance to speak without being interrupted. Then ask what part of that need can be met now through your own action, through trusted people, through therapy, through community, through legal protection, or through practical change. The first letter tells you what remains unfinished with them. The second reveals what can still be cared for without them. This distinction matters. You may never receive the apology. You can still stop blaming yourself for believing them. You may never receive an explanation. You can still decide what behavior you will no longer accept. You may never be chosen by that person. You can still choose a life in which you are not required to beg for basic care. You may never restore the relationship. You can still restore your capacity to trust slowly and wisely. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. A trustworthy heart does not promise that no one will hurt you. It promises that you will listen when something hurts. It does not demand that you remain open to everyone. It learns where openness is safe. It does not use hatred as a guard at every door. It uses discernment. Hatred says, "No one can be trusted." Discernment says, "Trust will be built through consistent action." Hatred says, "They were entirely evil, and I was entirely innocent." Discernment says, "What they did was harmful, and I will understand my own patterns so I do not repeat this story." Hatred keeps the wound at the center of identity. Discernment allows the wound to become one part of a larger life. You may wonder whether compassion for someone who harmed you excuses them. It does not. Compassion is not the denial of responsibility. It is the recognition that harmful people are also shaped by fear, habit, confusion, and wounds they may never have examined. Understanding the causes of an action does not remove its consequences. A fire may have begun because of faulty wiring rather than malice. You still leave the burning building. You can understand why someone became who they became and still refuse to stand where they continue causing harm. Compassion simply keeps their darkness from becoming the model for your own behavior. You do not have to hate them to leave. You do not have to destroy their humanity to protect yours. This may be the deepest art of letting go. To say, "You are a human being. You are not the right person to remain close to me." To say, "I release the hope that you will become someone you have repeatedly chosen not to become." To say, "I will not punish you in my mind forever, and I will not invite you back into the same place." To say, "I hope you heal, but I will not wait at the door." Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. Awareness notices attachment and does not shame it. Of course, you wanted the relationship to last. Awareness notices resentment and does not feed it automatically. Of course, part of you wanted justice. Awareness notices the illusion of control and returns to what can actually be chosen. One message, one boundary, one breath, one evening in which the phone remains closed. Letting go may happen many times. You let go when you wake and remember. You let go when a mutual friend mentions their name. You let go when a photograph appears unexpectedly. You let go when loneliness tries to edit the past and remove every reason you left. You let go when anger tries to edit the past in the other direction and remove every moment that was real. You let go by allowing the story to become whole. There was love. There was harm. There were needs. There were limits. There were moments of beauty. There were moments you should not return to. A whole story is easier to release than a false one. The false story demands constant defense. The whole story can finally become history. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. Perhaps tonight you will find yourself holding the phone again. The room will be dark. The old conversation will be waiting. Your thumb may hover over the screen. Nothing in this reflection requires you to feel no pain. The key may still be in your pocket. You may still remember the house, the light in the kitchen, the sound of laughter from another room, the way someone once said your name before it became difficult. You do not need to hate the house. You do not need to burn it down in memory. You do not need to stand outside forever either. Take the key from your pocket. Feel its shape. Thank it for what it once opened. Acknowledge what happened behind that door. Then place it somewhere. You no longer need to carry it against your body. The house may remain. The memories may remain. Love, in some form, may remain. But your hand is free. Outside, the rain has become softer. Morning light begins to enter the room. A cup of tea cools beside a silent phone. The message you once needed may never arrive. Still breath arrives. The day arrives. Your life, which waited patiently while you stood at the old address, arrives again. Peace is practiced in ordinary moments. Awareness changes the direction of a life. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.